What's going on, guys? Welcome to a very special episode of Tooned Up on the Renegade Pop Culture Podcast Network. My name is Mike. I'm your host for this evening. With me is my co-captain, Cameron.
Howdy, howdy.
And today we have the co-directors of the Netflix animated film Animal Crackers. Introducing Scott Christian Sava.
Hey.
And Tony Bancroft.
Howdy, howdy. Good to see you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
No problem.
Thanks for joining. Now, first of all, I want to apologize that it's taken so long to get this interview together and that we happen to be recording on the same weekend of the release of the live action remake of Mulan, which I know we all have our opinions on.
Yeah.
Oh, we could just do a podcast on that, couldn't we?
Yeah. It would be very interesting. But here to talk about Animal Crackers.
I know. Well, it's still on Netflix, thankfully. It came out, was
2
that
months
July?
ago.
Yeah.
July 14th or 24th?
July 24th. So yeah, it's been
was.
about 7 weeks. No, 9 weeks.
And I hear it's now still like the number one animated film of the summer.
Yeah, the number one animated film in the world for the summer. And we were number 10 in America, according to Forbes, that came out a couple days ago. But factor in the rest of the world, and we were number one because we were pretty popular everywhere.
Wow, that's
it
awesome.
was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It did really, really, really well. Netflix called and said the film just exceeded all expectations, and
then they wrote a big check.
Yeah, I wish.
Was that step 2?
Yeah.
That never seems to be step 2.
It never does. It never
Yeah.
If only.
Yeah.
As someone who's followed the production of this for, gosh, at least like 4 to 5 years, I'm honestly just so happy that you guys finally got to release the film.
Yeah.
We are too.
That was, you go into making an independent animated movie is not easy. And you go into it thinking, okay, I know what the hard part's going to be. That's going to be raising the funds independently, getting these millions and millions of dollars that you need to make a movie. Nope, that wasn't it. You think, okay, well, it's going to be making the movie, the production itself, getting all these artists together, working with 2 different countries, U.S. and Spain, and just the journey over a year and a half time, 2 years of time making the movie. Nope, that wasn't it. It was the distribution. The thing that we thought would be kind of the easiest and kind of the no-brainer element was the most difficult. It took us 3 years on this journey to get Netflix to release our film.
We spent more time getting the film distributed than we did actually making the movie.
True.
Well, it's great that the film is now released and it's had monumental success. That's just awesome. Like,
Thanks. It's so nice to just finally, after sitting on the film for 3 years, it's nice to hear feedback from parents and kids and even reviewers. It's just, because this was my first film. So Tony's been through this before, where you doubt every decision you've made. Was this the right thing to do? Was this the right thing? Was this it? And to finally hear that people are enjoying it, it's not just a jumbled mess, which your brain starts to tell you is, well, maybe it's just this horrible, horrible thing that just you can't see it because you're so close to it. And so I think for me, that's been the biggest relief, is just to know that I didn't screw it up so bad that I'll never work in this town again.
You said you're so close to this. I understand this was based off a graphic novel. Why don't you go more into the origins of this story?
Yeah, it all happened. All of my stories, all of my books came from my kids. I have twin boys, and when they were around 7 or 8, we were in the backyard eating those Barnum animal crackers, and just the idea came to me, which was, what if when you eat a lion cookie, poof, you become a lion, and they loved it, and so I just wrote it down, and months later, I turned it into a graphic novel, and I showed it to Tony, and he loved it. And a friend of mine, Kevin Grievous, who wound up playing Samson, the strongman, he encouraged me to turn it into a screenplay, and I did. And God, it was several years later. It was about another 2 more years later that we finally got the funding to make the movie, and I got to call Tony up because I'd been using Tony's name for years. Yeah, I'm working with Tony Bancroft. And when I finally called him up to say, hey, I finally got the movie, he was unavailable. So, and tell him why, Tony.
I was working on a film with one of the Beatles, with Paul McCartney, and he had a children's book that he was adapting into an animated feature, and I was hired on as the director. And so, yeah, when Scott would call me, I was like, I really wanted to work with him on Animal Crackers. Didn't think it would ever come around because I really didn't know that he would ever find that money, because I'd been down that road trying to, even with credits at Disney and having done Mulan, trying to find money can be one of the hardest things to do. And then when he called me and said that he had the money, I'm like, well, I'm working with Paul McCartney on this thing. I don't, how do I say no? How do I quit Paul McCartney? But then through a series of events, within a couple of weeks of that, I think, maybe a month or so, that all fell apart. That project fell apart, and it didn't happen. Oh. And I'm on the phone with Scott going, hey, buddy, you still got that Animal Crackers money?
Sliding up next to him, be like, hey, buddy.
Hey, buddy. That's right. That's what it was.
It was, and that's been pretty much the making of the movie, and everything has been all of these ups and downs. These oh, I didn't get the money. Oh, I got the money. Oh, Tony's not available. Oh, now he's available. Oh, and the movie was originally supposed to be a $10 million direct to DVD. And we had a very small budget. 10 million is really small. And this was in 2014. So this was before really streaming was an option. So your choices were DVD or theatrical. Those are your two choices. And so we thought, well, let's see if we can get at least one big name to just kind of throw it out there. And Ian McKellen was the name I was looking for, but just as backups, we had Chesterfield we had Danny DeVito, we had Sylvester Stallone, we had Raven Simone, et cetera, et cetera. And through some twist of fate, Ian McKellen said yes. And then a week later, Danny DeVito said yes, and Sylvester Stallone said yes, and Raven Simone. And we're going, we can't afford this. What do we do? And so we had to go back, and we raised some more money. And then we decided the film was now too big. Once John and Emily came on, it was just too big to be a direct-to-DVD movie. And so we set out to make a theatrical film. And so
when you were writing the screenplay, did you have those actors specifically in mind?
Only Patrick Warburton and Ian McKellen were in mind when I was writing it. And the rest of them were, we were given, our casting director gave us a list of potential actors for the film. And we kind of looked them over and threw them out, number 1, number 2, number 3. And John Krasinski was not on my list because I'd never seen The Office. So he was just, so when they proposed John Krasinski to me, I was like, who? And it was just, trust me, he's good. Tony started sending me video clips from The Office and other stuff going, he's a good guy. Trust me. And Emily wasn't on the list either. That was purely just, we were at a screening or at the first filming, and John was just telling me how much his wife liked the script. And I just said, thank you, because I had no idea who he was married to. I mean, I didn't know who he was. So why would I know who he was married to? Fortunately, the microphones were hot, and Tony comes running in.
I'm like, Scott, shut up for a minute. Yeah, and because he was offering it, oh, well, let me text my wife and see if she'd be interested. And Scott's like, what? I mean, my wife's interested in doing the part too. That doesn't mean I'm going to text her and ask her what's going on. I'm like, no, let him go. Let him text.
Let John text.
Yeah, that's our new motto.
That's how Emily came on board. And so it was, just really just a series of just strange occurrences and weird coincidences.
I mean, I will say from my perspective, having been in casting sessions at Disney on feature films, I had kind of gotten used to this idea of people throwing out names, and you're like, oh yeah, that'd be nice, but I don't know, and even the casting director is going, yeah, but we're never going to get them probably. But these are some low hanging fruits that we could probably easily get. And these are maybes. These are like and then the directors always had the outlandish ideas. I would really love to get Sean Connery and as the voice of of Simba the lion, or something. I don't know what. So I got so when we were doing our casting session for Animal Crackers, which is this compared to Disney low budget feature, and I didn't have hardly any expectation, and Scott's coming up with these big names. I'm just thinking, well, yeah, I mean, that would be really cool. I mean, but that's never going to happen. And then we hear back from, what was the first one was Mr. Ian McKellen, Gandalf.
We didn't think Ian was going to say yes. I mean, he was the voice in my head when I was writing it, but I was just, me and the kids were watching a lot of Lord of the Rings at the time. And it was just, it didn't make sense because it was an American film, and his brother's name is Buffalo Bob, and it was just like it was right. Just funny. And so but we didn't think he'd say yes. I honestly didn't expect that, and when he said yes, we were just kind of in shock, going, oh my God, what do we do? And then it was just like the next week, it was like, I remember Jamie calling us, our casting director. He's like, you're never gonna guess what Danny DeVito said yes. No way. And Sylvester Stallone. What? It
was like a domino effect.
It really was. And we were like, we can't afford it. I mean, it was way out of our budget, and they were working for the numbers that we had offered was like, a tenth of what they would normally get. Mm-hmm. Ian McKellen said yes. So everybody else was going to be working for that same number. It was just that number that Ian McKellen said yes to was our entire budget for casting. Wow. And so it was like when John Krasinski, Ian McKellen, Raven Simone, Sylvester Stallone, Danny DeVito, when they all came on, it was just like, oh God, But people say unknowingly they think that most of the money went to the budget. It's not. About a tenth of our budget went to the casting. Sorry. Is all it was.
Wow, that's actually interesting to know, because I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And that's actually very cool. Did they when you did you send them the scripts, or and were they just like, heck yeah, I want to do this? And
I think this is what I tell people is I don't think they would have worked on the film if they didn't like the script. Not for what we were paying, because they weren't doing it for the money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
they like the script. We heard that from the agents too, is that they really thought it was fun and something unique and different.
That's very cool, because sometimes I know some people are like, well, I want this amount of money, but to hear them just be like, I'll do whatever the pay is, whatever. I like the script. That's very cool. I like that.
I mean, it's not like Buffalo Bob a little. Like he wasn't in it for the money. He was in it for the entertainment.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It was the hardest thing. Yeah. And I think that's I think when you look at small films, I might look at it in a different way now, knowing that the talent that's on there is definitely not doing it for the money. And depending, I mean, I don't know, maybe a small film might spend 50% of their budget on a big name or something like that. I don't know. I this is my first film, so I don't know what other films have done, but in our case, it was only 10%, and that was for 13 actors. So, we have, those were the I think it was 11 to 13, I forget. But it was a lot of good names, and but it was an experience. It was, it was amazing, because I would watch Tony, and he'd walk in, and Patrick Warburton would walk in, and they're like, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" And and Tony knew Gilbert Gottfried. So Tony was just such a calm old pro, where I was on Xanax, flying from Nashville to New York or London or whatever. I was just nervous meeting everybody, and so Tony was just this calm throughout the film, which was just
it was so much fun. It was such a contrast to working at Disney, which is why I loved it so much. It had all the elements that I loved about directing a film, except for the budget. So it had, yeah, but it had all the creative elements that I love. It had the freedoms, and it had the, there's no limits. We could just do whatever we want, and there's no executives and, Michael Eisner or anything, or shareholders to please, or not even our investors. We had just had great investors that just gave us the money and gave us trust, and they really kept all the creativity. It was just like me and Scott and our, one of other producer that was really had kind of the say, and and story-wise, the creativity just flowed because of that. So it was a ton of fun. And of course, this was, for me, it was about supporting Scott and his dream to make this movie. I had that experience at Disney. Now, I haven't done my movie. I've always been kind of hired on to other people's movies, I guess you could say. And maybe one day I'll have that experience of creating my own movie. But I just enjoy telling stories, and whether they stem from me or from somebody else, I love finding ways to create new characters in an entertaining way through a great story. And so it really isn't about me as much as finding that great story. And like Ian McKellen and those actors, when I fell in love with the script, that was the first thing. Scott sent me the script, and I'd read quite a few scripts at that point, a lot of smaller independent films and things like that. And Scott, like, first time out writing the script for Animal Crackers, it was far better than anything I had read around that time period. So it was phenomenal.
How did the two of you meet, like, for this production? Like did you know each other beforehand, or is it like
Yeah, we go way back. Scott and I, we met on a panel actually at a university that was doing a talk on faith and comics and entertainment, something like that. And so I'd never met Scott before, never met anybody on the panel, and we all got to know each other and got real chummy. And I had just left Disney to start my own animation company, and started I liked the creative mind that Scott had, and his easygoing attitude. So we'd invite him over. He got to know my partners in my company. We'd hang out. He ended up doing a commercial with me too, through the company. And we always shared stories, and we shared a common goal and a common passion and dream to make our own independent animated feature someday. And for Scott, it was, I'd love to bring one of my stories to life. And for me, it was just, I would love to do something in my own small way, an independent, where I just had more control than I did at Disney. And it was a different creativity for me. And so that came to fruition with Animal Crackers. So we just didn't know it'd be like, 12 or 15 years later.
Yeah, it took a while.
Yeah.
So, I guess let's talk about the elephant cracker in the room. Would you like to talk about some of the distribution history? Because it seems like that was one of the biggest things that I knew about, was how it kept jumping from distributor to distributor.
Yeah. And let me guess, you probably heard about it because of Scott's posting constantly on social media.
that's one of them.
Yeah, partially, but then it like just looking into the production and such, and hearing about it. So what exactly happened? Because from what I can tell, it's just like you guys jumped on Relativity Media, and then they went under. Then you went on another one. They went under, and then Entertainment Studios was going to, and then they let go, said like, no, we're not going to do that. And then they pushed out Arctic Dogs, which, so like, and then you guys got onto Netflix. So from the time from there to Netflix, was there like, did you have to like buy back the rights to the movie, or were you always on hold with the rights? And such?
No, it was, the way that it works is it's kind of like a possession is 9/10 of the law kind of thing. So when we signed with Relativity, they didn't do their part, and we did our part by giving them the film. And so what had happened was they were going bankrupt, and to keep the film from sitting in a bankruptcy, we had to kind of pay like an extortion fee, is what I call it. But we had to.
Oh, it was definitely.
We had to pay money to get the, it was like, how much you got? Well, we got this much left in the bank. Okay, I'll take it. And then they gave us back the film. And then we went to the next company, which, within 6 months went bankrupt. And then with Byron Allen's company, he just, the problem with our film was it became too big for DVD. And even in 2017, Netflix and streaming still wasn't really an option with the cast that we had. And so everybody wanted to put it out in the theaters. And to do that, you need to raise $40 to $50 million to market it, which is ridiculous for a $19 million film. Yeah. But the cast was so big and the music was good and the story was good and the quality of animation didn't look like an Arctic Dogs. Mm-hmm. And so we were just kind of in this thing where we made the film too good to go to DVD, and the actors didn't want it to go to DVD, and the investors didn't want it to go to DVD. And I know Tony wanted to walk down that red carpet too, because he knew it should. And I
was used to that.
Yeah. But the thing is,
where's the red carpet?
Where's the red carpet? I'm ready. He's got his tux and everything. But the thing is that we were just in this awkward position where the film got too big. It wasn't a $150 million Disney Pixar film. Mm-hmm. So you couldn't justify spending $50 to $100 million in marketing. But the theaters won't take a film. Like any of those distributors could have put the film out had the theaters accepted the film without $30, $40 million worth of marketing. That's the problem. It's the way that the theaters are set up. It's the way the distribution is set up. And I'm not cutting those distributors any slack for screwing us the way they did, but it wasn't 100% their fault. Mm-hmm. AMC, Cinemark, all of those, Regal, they won't touch a film unless they know that people know about it and are going to come to their theaters. And the only way they're going to know is if you spend tens of millions of dollars marketing it, TV commercials, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that, for a smaller studio like a Relativity or Serafini or an Entertainment Studios, is way out of their budget. They can't do it, but they want to do it. And so they promise you, we're out there and I've got investors lined up, but the investors, they weren't there. They weren't there. They were hoping that their investors could come up, but their investors couldn't come up with that kind of money. And so we just, for 3 years, we just kept running into promises that people couldn't live up to.
And what happens over time too is that you, just like bad fish, after a while, it just kind of starts to stink. Well, there was no legitimate reason that Animal Crackers was having these problems, but people in Hollywood just started assuming, well, it must not be a good film. I mean, it just, how could it be any good if they can't get a distribution deal and they've gone through this studio and that studio? They're either difficult.
They blame the film.
They blame the film. They thought Scott was nuts, or he's trying to do a deal where he gets all the money and nobody wanted to work with him because there was a lot of assumptions that started happening, and we would bump up against that. And in the meantime, like Scott was saying in the beginning, Netflix was growing. They were getting more of a following, and their animation division was growing too. They'd gone from, their first model was, let's snatch up, films like Animal Crackers that were already independently made. We kind of missed that first trend. And then they started getting more and more money. And as they grew, they put their own money into making their own animated features. And we didn't fit under that because we were already making our movie. Done. And by that point we were done. And then ultimately they grew even more, and they were like, okay, well, our stuff is going slow. The stuff that we're building ourselves and putting money into ourselves, we just need to start snatching up some other things to get out there. And they went back to Animal Crackers, and that's when they were like, okay, wait a minute, this is good. And this is something that we should be doing. And I think in a way, Animal Crackers has helped change their model again at Netflix, where they're probably going, what's wrong with not, Animal Crackers has helped change their model again at Netflix, where they're probably going, what's wrong with not, we were definitely, I think, a diamond in the rough, to use an Aladdin kind of term, that we were probably that little engine that it is a unique story. There's not like a ton of animal crackers are out there where Netflix could just go, oh, okay, well, there's this small little independent. Oh, and guess what? It's also a phenomenal film, or a really great film. It's not a big risk, or it's not a loser film that we're going to just try and buy cheap. I think we were a very credible film, and our cast really led the way for that. People would hear about our cast and it would give us instant credibility, because here we were, a nobody studio having come out with this big feature. And and it was really that grew, I think, on the interests of Netflix, and ultimately they just pulled the trigger on it, and we were like, finally it happened.
Not for anything, you, but Lord. All the way up until July 23rd, I was still nervous something was going to happen, and it did. Okay. Right, Tony?
Yes.
On July 20th.
The night before the release. This is incredible. This is just the story of Animal Crackers. It's like the night before the release on Netflix, like literally at 7:30 p.m., I get a text from Scott saying one of the investors or a person that was involved with it is suing Netflix, or putting a lawsuit against Netflix to not release Animal Crackers until they get an injunction, until they get paid. And they were claiming that they were not paid a certain amount of money or something like that. It was all a made up thing, not real at all. But there was this, and we found out from Netflix, and they were kind of like, I got freaked out, and because I'm thinking, Netflix they don't want to get involved with any legal stuff, and it's not really their film, so they're going to be like, this isn't our business, we just will put a stop to releasing it. That's what I thought was going to happen at the last minute. And then thankfully, though, Netflix was just like, nah, this is going to blow over, it's not a thing. And they had seen that kind of thing before.
The next morning, and they got it dismissed. But I was just like, I threw my hands up. I was like, yep, of course. I was like, this is the part of the movie where you find out that Bruce Willis was a ghost the whole time. That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
And it was just after everything we had been through and more. But yeah, fortunately it did come out. And that was Friday, July 24th. Saturday, July 25th. We got the numbers, and the way we got the numbers was the same way everybody else gets the numbers, which is you go to Netflix and you see what the top 10 are. And we're like, oh my God, we're at number 3, which was great. And then the next day, and then for the next 10 days after that, we were at number 2. And we were just thrilled. And there's a website called Flix Patrol that lets you see how the film is doing around the world. And it updates every day. And we were in the top 10 in all 46 countries that we were in for like 2 weeks, and it did really, really, really well. So that was really encouraging. I mean, I wish that equated financially in some way to Tony and I, but it didn't. But it was at least encouraging, and we could say we had the number 1. I mean, considering how many, and this is just me being a bit of a dreamer. Considering how many subscribers, like almost 200 million subscribers that Netflix has, if it was the number 1 animated movie in the world on Netflix, call me crazy, but isn't it the number 1 animated movie in the world across all platforms? Because there was no theatrical. It was probably, beat out anything Disney Plus had, because again, they had more subscribers. So technically we were the number 1 animated film in the world across every platform. At least that's what I'm going to tell myself.
Yeah. Thanks due to COVID, there's no theaters to compete with. So Disney and Pixar didn't have any movies out, which was nice.
We were the summer blockbuster.
And it is one of those weird things when we look back at it, like, could we have asked for now? Yeah. Let's go back to remembering that a year ago, I was calling up Scott going, dude, I don't think this movie's ever going to come out. We spent all those years and all that money and got all this great cast and crew together, and nobody's going to see it. And we were both like,
Tony and I would call each other about every month. I would get depressed and I would call him up and he would cheer me up. And then a month later he'd be depressed. He'd call me up and I'd cheer him up.
Yeah. And so that was like a year ago. And now to be in the time of, okay, COVID hitting, theaters shutting down. What's the best possible outcome that we could have expected? And that's coming out on Netflix, the biggest online streaming platform internationally. And during the time of COVID, where people are starving for product and going to Netflix like crazy, it was the perfect storm for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like you guys made like the best, like you guys made like the best possible solution out of like the worst possible scenario.
Right.
I wish we could take any credit. We could not take any credit for what happened, because that Netflix was the only option that presented itself to us in that time. And after everything we had been through, you know, it's funny because people will come to me and they'll say, "Aren't you excited?" And I would say, no, because it was around the time the film just came out, and I was like, no, because after everything I've been through, I'd have to be bipolar to go from down here to all the way up here. You know, I can't do that. I am happy and I'm feeling a little bit better every day, but it's just, we've been through so much. It's very hard to be joyous about it. We're thankful, we're grateful, but it's hard to be joyous. And so, but slowly, I think, it's been 2 months and change. I think I'm slowly just starting to feel a little bit more calm about it and a little bit happier.
Like, hey, maybe that was a good thing, and maybe my film did come out.
Yeah.
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 Well,
it did take us a couple weeks to really believe that it actually happened too.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, man. Oh man, I think I would have had a heart attack of that just like the day before the release, something's about to happen. And I mean, I'm still hearing like no release dates for stuff like that Vanguard animated film Charming, for at least for the US. And then there's that
Blazing Samurai.
Yeah, Blazing Samurai finally getting like production going again. And then that Snow White and the Red Shoes film that
I thought that was out already.
Well,
that's coming out.
Yeah, it's coming out soon here finally, but
it was out in like Korea and
yeah. It's
I'm
like
actually involved with that. Actually,
Yeah,
I was the voice.
Tony,
I was the voice director for that production, and I'm doing press for that next week, as a matter of fact. So we can get on the podcast again and talk about Red Shoes. But yeah, no, I'm excited about that finally, because they were friends of mine, and it's a South Korean animation company, really great crew of people, really passionate. It reminded me so much of our story. We were just ahead of them, Animal Crackers, and yet we barely came out before them. But we were like a good year or two ahead of them production wise, and yet they're just now coming out just after us. But yeah, I think they're coming out through Lionsgate. At least Lionsgate is doing all the
film. Like I think it was Lionsgate or Summit Entertainment, like something from their side of things. And Tony, you also are an executive producer on it was a film at Annecy.
Mosley.
Yeah, Mosley. And any word on that?
I mean, that had a release in New Zealand, which is their own backyard. That's where it was produced largely. Right. China and New Zealand. But like it's the story of a lot of independents these days. Independence used to be like, oh, it's a sure thing. If you make an animated feature and you're independent and your budget is low, you're going to get picked up and you're going to have, a release. And, who knows if it'll be a big release or not, but you'll get released, and because it was just hard to find the product. So now it's still hard to find good quality product, but there's a heck of a lot more competition when you have all these online streamers and they're making their own films. They don't need to be picking up films anymore at Annecy and some of these film festivals like they used to. They already have a slate. I mean, I heard the other day that Netflix has like 40 films. They have 40 films in various degrees of production and development. So they're not really looking.
50. I think they 50. Said they're going to do 10 a year for the next 5 years.
Wow.
That's just Netflix. So it's a good time to be in animation, but it's also one of the hardest times to be an independent right now. And you really got to hit strongly and hit up front in a big way. And it used to be a game too, where you'd play it, like we did, try and get most of the film done. So it puts you in a better a better play position to get a better deal because, you have more vested in it instead of getting the money from or distribution up front where they take advantage of you oftentimes. And there's a whole business side to when you actually pull the trigger and try and go out for distribution and all that kind of stuff. And now it's changed back to like, boy, you got to get distribution locked in really early and try and get that partner. Otherwise, you're really throwing away money in a big way because you're risking the investment of your investors. So it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember like doing research and looking at the animation lineup like through the decades, and it seemed like U.S. animation, or at least like what we would get outside of like Disney, it would be like maybe something from Warner Brothers and then a few foreign properties brought over. And now there's like so much competition. You definitely it seems like you really have to put your best foot forward or else things might not work out. But again, no, we're just happy that Animal Crackers finally hit the finish line, and we were very positive in our reviews of it. And
thank you.
So I'm curious about some of the production of it. Were there any like when animation for the film began, were there any like ground rules of how like this is how characters walk, this is how they emote, or like something like that? Like, was there like a guidebook or something like that?
Not as much as I'm used to, and not as much as we probably would have liked to, but what we had going for us was far more than I knew when I first started on the film. And that is a really talented group in Spain. Valencia, Spain is where we did the production. And there's the artistic director of that group. His name's Jaime Maestro. And Jaime is a really talented animator from Spain that started a studio and got to know Scott many years ago. He and his producer friend got to know Scott many years ago, and they've done some work together. And Scott had always promised them, if I get a feature, you guys are doing it. And so they helped out do the teaser trailer for Scott, help get the investment, the whole thing. And sure enough, Scott paid that off by saying, okay, you guys are it. So this is their first time doing a feature. They hired a bunch of very young artists and animators in, like fresh out of school. But their passion and ability to rise to the standards that not only I had, Scott had, but also Jaime had, was the thing that really paid off for us in spades. So we didn't have the money or really the time to do the amount of iterations that I was used to at Disney, or even on some of the other low budget films that I've been a part of. They kind of had to either hit it right the first time, or we might have had a second or third time, but only on special scenes. And so a lot of that we didn't really get the time to do the early pre-production stuff where you're doing like walk cycles and tests, animation. You see that on the bigger features, but that largely was just done in Spain in-house by Jaime, just trying to make the time to do it himself. But, we would just see things and go, oh, wow, you guys are...
It was good. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just hitting it out of the ballpark really early too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing that they got was a masterclass by Tony. Tony would fly out there for a couple weeks and teach them and do drawings and show them the fundamentals of, a Disney animator. And so they really got a lot of hands-on teaching, which was really, really good. And I think the fact that they were young and it was their first film, they were a lot more open to that too. You weren't getting these curmudgeon-y guys, I know what I'm doing. I don't need some pencil drawer to come and tell me what to do.
Right. I'm a traditional animator.
Yeah. Get away with me to that Mickey Mouse stuff. But that was really, really good. The only thing I could think of that we gave, I gave the mouth shapes. This was something that I really found funny, was the mouths were just kind of just moving in random places, and I really wanted the lip syncs to be good, but it was funny because I remember Jaime explaining it to me, saying, out here in Spain, all of the movies we see have been dubbed from English, or Japanese. And so we're not used to seeing lip syncs. To us, it's no big deal. So we're just making the mouth kind of move because that's what they're used to. And I was like, no. So I remember drawing in my sketchbook the different mouth shapes that I wanted for the different phonemes, and so I had to work with them on that. And I remember I was kind of really taking a bit of a Wallace and Gromit type of thing where they were very pronounced. They were very, very specific shapes, as if almost like you were just swapping shapes on a piece of clay. And I remember that took about a week or two for them to kind of get into that groove. And I was happy with that. The other thing was the lighting. I really, really wanted to really just try something unique, because it doesn't cost money to put more artistic thought into something. It just, whether it's the designs or the acting or whatever, it doesn't cost money if you have the right talent there. And so you can make $150 million looking film if you have the right people in place who can do that, or if you have the right vision. And the same thing comes with having a decent script too, which is, when you start off with a script that's not good, you spend so much time and so much money trying to find out what's wrong with it but if you start off with that, you're saving that money. And so I think in a lot of ways I was looking at it saying, we had Tony, we had Armand Serrano, we had Carter Goodrich, we had Jaime, we had John Pomeroy, we had all the story. We had such great, talented people on the film that let's utilize that. And so for me, coming from school as an illustrator, I really wanted to focus on lighting and framing shots with light and just having some color and whatnot. So those were the only two things I remember that we gave them as any kind of instructions. But they got, the thing that really, really helped the film the most was Tony going out there as many times as he did and just teaching them. And that was, I think, is what really shows on the screen.
Well, having just watched the film again recently, I can tell that all that work really paid off, especially towards the end during that big climax scene.
Oh my God, that still gets me. It's funny because I go, wow, every time I see that chimera chasing after Mackenzie Monkey, I'm going, this is just so good. The funny thing is, I remember when we were coming out with it theatrically, we were talking about having it come out, and we had sold it to the UK. They wanted to make it a PG. No, I'm sorry. They wanted it to be a G movie, but they couldn't because the ending was so intense that they wanted us to cut out that sequence. I was like, there's no way I'm cutting that out. But they was like, it's too scary for young kids. And I was like, you guys could cut it, but it's not getting cut elsewhere. If that's what, you guys want to do in the UK, but man, you're missing out. It's really, really fun. And it is intense. I will say that it is intense.
So what time period was that? Was that like near the beginning of production or near the end?
You mean the UK company wanting to change it?
Yeah.
Oh no, that was 2016, 2017. That was after the film was done. And yeah.
That's interesting because by that point, films like How to Train Dragons, Coraline, Kubo, and the Two Strings have come out, and not counting like the foreign animation stuff, there's a lot of intensity in some films. Yeah. Like, I guess
I guess to show you that there's different tiers. Like if it's a big studio film, they would never even broach that subject. They wouldn't bring it up. They couldn't. They wouldn't. They just don't have the power. But when you're a little guy like we were, everybody wants to come in and say, "Oh, you guys don't know what you're doing. You need to take that out, or that's not going to fly here." And they try and strong arm you. And we got that constantly. Thankfully, Scott, being the producer of the film too, he's a very strong producer, and he knew how to stick up for himself, and he knew how to stick up for the film.
For better or for worse.
Yeah. He destroyed some relationships here and there, but other than that.
No. So Tony, since you've had experience like working on Disney and such, was there like how did you approach this project? Like when you were like joined on and such, like when you saw the script and saw like the concept or like the visuals and such, like how did you approach it?
I mean, for me, because it was such, I knew what it was when I first came on, which was that it was Scott's baby. He co-wrote the script with another screenwriter, and he came up with the story, and he got it off the ground, and he got the money. I wanted to support my friend, and so that was kind of the first step into it. Was like, I'm not coming into something that I'm just going to take over. Although there was and maybe in the beginning I felt like, okay, I would have a greater amount of control than what ultimately happened. But I also had a heart for what Scott was trying to achieve with this first movie. And so really my goal is, and it really is the same for any of these films that I come on to, you know, if it's already started or they, you know, over the years, I've become kind of a fix-it doctor, I guess, in some ways, where like on Mosley and Red Shoes, that they'll bring me in and I'm trying to really help them put out some fires story-wise or whatever. And my goal was just to plus what Scott already had going for him. Let's hold on to those things that are really working. Let's try and fix the things that aren't working and make it better. And if we could do that and at a low price point, that was the dream. We could make a good movie with a good story for less money and therefore make a larger profit. That's still the dream I know that Scott and I really still have. And I don't know that because of the length of time and the difficulty with distribution that it played out to the success level that we would have liked to have seen it go. But it was a really clean, clear start in the direction of that goal.
That's very cool. I like hearing that because like when you read up on stuff like the Little Nemo and Dreamland developments, it's always like you feel bad because it's like obviously something either here or there or everywhere was not coming together. So it's cool to hear that everything was pretty A-okay on this one. And
well, yeah, and I can't say enough of, because I've heard about, because a lot of the smaller independents, even though they have less money, doesn't mean that they have more creative control. There's still a lot of voices in the room, oftentimes on those smaller, low budget films that you would expect only on a big feature. And that's why I think in many ways I was spoiled doing this film with Scott, because I experienced something that I always wanted to, which was small group of creatives controlling, you know, a pretty good sized budget with a great cast and a great story to start off with. That's a chemistry that you want to get into. That's kind of the secret potion that I think is really hard to see happen and come together.
Awesome. So I remember from some of Scott's posts, there was some improv moments between some of the characters and such. A lot of times when I hear like some terms get thrown around like line-o-rama and such, where you two balance out like what stayed and what left, or like like we're not going to use that, but we'll use this here and whatnot.
Are you talking about like editing together lines from multiple takes?
Yeah, like just like it's like how you hear about like the Genie production in Aladdin and such, where they just let Robin Williams go and then they'd be like, okay, we'll take this line here, this line, or this take or whatever.
Mm-hmm. It was like that for us. I mean, you know, especially with John and Emily, when they came in, it was just them because they'd never worked together before. And so they were just goofing around all the time.
Yeah,
just
so natural.
Making each other laughing to the point to where we're keeping the laughter in there because Emily was laughing so much. We're like, that's just part of their relationship. John's just a goofball, and you know, Emily laughs about it. But you know, we had storyboarded the entire film out at that point, and John and Emily came in, and they were just. I use this explanation a lot, but the scene where they're in the minivan, and they open up the box of cookies, and Mackenzie wants the cookies, and so the way I had written it was Mackenzie says, well, I'm hungry. And Zoe says, well, there's a fruit stand. Those are the only 2 lines I wrote there, but that's not what's in the film, because, and you'll see in some of the stuff I posted in the videos was they're just, you can see that they're kind of playing off each other, and it wasn't rehearsed in any way. And it was, she just says, John says, well, she's hungry. And Emily says, well, I don't have anything. He says, well, check underneath the, check in the side compartment. Well, there's nothing. We'll look underneath the sunglasses. I'm looking on this. And so as they're arguing, then she says, oh, look, a fruit stand. And then she starts to sing, I like to eat. And if you watch the video, because like, this is all happening first time, and I'm holding up my iPhone for all of this, but you'll see John's kind of like looking at her like, what are you doing, woman? Why are you saying, oh, I see what you're doing? Then he kind of comes in the next verse, apples and bananas, and that was kind of how that whole session, like every time we were going there for 4 hours, they were taking 1 or 2 lines and they were expanding it into so many different things. And then it was a matter for us to say, what can we keep and what can't we? Because otherwise the movie would have been 6 hours long. But it was so fun. It really, really was a lot of fun. And then we would add visual cues. So if you noticed, when they're like looking for the food, she lets go of the steering wheel. And so they're both like, like she just completely, and they're both looking in the side compartment. The car starts to drift off the road until John looks up, and say, oh, he grabs the steering wheel. And then that's when she looks up and she goes, oh, a fruit stand. So we started to actually, it changed from one thing to another to a third physical gag, which we added into it because of, that. So the inspiration from the script hit them, and then their stuff gave us inspiration to add another little visual gag, which is really a lot of fun.
I love, details like that when like the director and the cast gets to like influence the sequence of events.
And that happened throughout the film. I mean, it happened there was a sequence where Horatio was monologuing, and we're like, it's great because it's Ian McKellen,
right?
Yeah, can we do something to kind of spice it up? Well, what if we have him sing? And then next thing you know, he's doing a duet with Gilbert Gottfried, written by Dan and Swampy, who created Phineas and Ferb. They wrote the song. Whoa. And so we anytime we just had what if we put a Queen song here? What if we did this? Yeah. What if we did that? It was just, there was no stupid ideas, and for the most part, I think every stupid idea made it into the movie, for better or for worse. We just figured, what the heck, let's try this, let's try that. And I think that was just the joy of it. And that was really what Tony was saying earlier about, he was really looking out for me because he knew that this was my first film, and I wanted to experience everything. So, it was just like, what are you doing with the storyboards, Tony? Well, I'm doing this. And, oh, do you think we should do this? Yeah. Well, I know what I'm doing. I've done this before. Okay, but what if we tried this and we tried that? And Tony would kind of roll his eyes and go, okay, you want to try that? We can try that, And it was.
Yeah, it's funny looking back at it now, but at the time it was horrible. No, I will say, I mean, that's the one thing that I connect with, I guess, looking back at the journey of Animal Crackers with most of all is that, at Disney, I think you get, because it's such a big conglomerate and it has a big, very serious structure, and these are big, budget movies, I think you tend to get locked into this kind of, this is serious business, and let's really dig deep into this. And, and you're just not allowed to, and you don't allow yourself after time to just dream and just to kind of openly be creative and dream about, well, what if we did this? And what if we did that? There, that does happen, but there's almost a sense of, because it's so big at Disney, well, that's somebody else's job. Somebody else is we'll give this to this person, and this person will do this, and they'll dream about this, and they'll dream about this or that, but when it's just us, and I'm watching Scott going, who's very anti-Hollywood, doesn't have those preconceived notions about how to work on a big budget film or anything, and he's just going, what if we got this person to do this? Or what if we had a song here and it was this song by this, by an 80s group that I grew up with and I loved, or Huey Lewis and the News and whatever. And I'm just like, this is crazy, but yeah, that does sound good. Let's do it.
So, like, did all the characters, like actors, get to improv a little, or was it like just like you had specific moments?
They're a lot more is probably written than you think a lot of times, but Emily and John probably did the most improv, I would say.
And Patrick
Warburton. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, and Harvey Firestein did. He came up with the whole reaching into his bosoms and pulling stuff out.
Let me see what I got here. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's that's up to the actors. Like Ian McKellen is pretty straight, to the thing. Danny DeVito did a lot of improving. Like he came up with he loved going. He would do
little fart noises.
Yeah. And so he just kind of, and he was very animated. So he'd be making like the gestures, like he's doing his armpit thing or whatever. It was like, well, Danny, they can't see you, but I think it would just depend on the actors, their personalities,
and the role.
The
role they were
but
playing.
everybody had the option to do it. It was just some of them really took it to the nth degree. Poor Stallone, he didn't really have much to work with, but
yeah.
I'm sure he would have liked to have done a little more improv, but it was fun. It was really, really fun just meeting everybody and experiencing all of that.
That's very cool. We loved the dialogue. I loved like the interactions between like Horatio and Zucchini, where Zucchini was just like, "You're my henchman," and it's just like, "No," and it's like, "Yeah, you say that, but you're my henchman." But
yeah.
Or any time that Patrick Warburton popped up, we always had Mike and I had like smiles and grins, and we just loved like so. Did some characters get like more animation focused? Because like I was observing Patrick's character, and he seemed very like vibrant and a little more cartoony. Like some were a little more, but or like was that ever a thing? Or like
I think it was just the role. The animators will get into a certain role. There's something about Patrick Warburton, and I think a lot of these our animators grew up with Kronk, of course, on Emperor's New Groove and things. And I think they were just so creatively enlightened by the performance that we got from Patrick Warburton that they probably put a little bit more, elbow grease into it, if you will, and had a little bit more fun here and there. But also his character design plays a part with that too, because he's big and bulky and kind of, you just want to kind of play with his expressions and his like, and really cheese it up. And that's part of his character, right? I mean, that's what Patrick's doing. And so, the more Patrick got kind of cornball or cheesy or something, the more the animators would go for that.
That design reminds me a lot of Andy Samberg's character from Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Like that was the first thing that came to mind, right? When Brock like first makes his appearance.
I love that film. Yeah,
and I also liked some of the lines that Wallace Shawn would say. It's like, how hard is it? Some moon coordinates and a ham sandwich, and you're good to go. And
Tony, remember we had probably about half a dozen of those, and I guess all of them almost got cut out. But yeah, Dean Laurie, my co-writer, and we were just coming up with a whole bunch of just fun. Like he would simplify everything, and Tony kept saying, "That's you, Scott. You'll take like the most difficult task." He said, "Oh, it's a piece of cake," And so he would always say, "You're Woodley." But yeah, he had that running joke, but I think we just ran out of room. If I had my way, I think everybody would have, a lot more time. And I think
that'd be another hour probably.
Yeah, I think that's what I kept trying to do. Is I kept trying to squeeze in like, well, let's just try to get this like little thing with Binkley and Brock, and they're playing around and and it was just like I kept throwing more scenes in and Tony's like, Scott, we got to focus on something. You got a whole scene here with the backstory. You got a whole thing here with Binkley and Brock. You got a whole thing here with Horatio, And, but I was just like, yeah, but everybody counts. It was like, they're all my babies. Everybody's special. And
that's one of the things you learn, I think, as you go as a director and about honing the story into what is the essence of it? What is it? What really matters? Because it can get you can fall in love with all the characters and fall in love with all these different moments, but to kind of step back and talk about pacing and look at, you know, where you're putting your time and your energy, and that goes into the production too. I mean, you know, where do you put your animation time? You know, if you have only so many iterations that you can afford, don't put it into the stuff where it's action stuff or whatever. Look at the close-up scenes and really hone those more, you know. And hopefully we did that. But some of it, you know, you learn as you go. And, you know, you always look back at everything as an artist and go, well, this could have been better and that could have been better. Right. And I think we you know, it's a torture that we do to ourselves as artists.
Well, you know, at least none of us had to eat dog biscuits for a job. So
at least that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I remember one of my favorite little animation touches was during the whole like rebuilding of the circus, and you see John's character going like suffering through eating all the dog biscuits, and there's just one where his face just freezes and he just doesn't even bite into it. He just tosses it. It's like, no,
I'm done. I'm done.
Like I can already tell this one's going to taste terrible. So
Yeah.
Were there any like story elements that you wish you could have like? Of course, like if you had more time and whatnot, like could have fleshed out more or had more time to think about or anything like that?
I mean, personally, I think you're seeing the director's cut. I mean, that's pretty much every shot we made. The film wasn't edited. We never got a chance to edit it. So at least from my point of view, that's every shot I wanted to tell. The problem is Tony and I wanted to cut about 20 minutes out of that. We wanted to really, really streamline it. We just never got a chance to.
I think that's my biggest thing is that I think there's better story oftentimes to be found in a shorter, simpler story than there is something that has all the kitchen sink and everything. So I think there's a better story there if we would have had another pass at editing, and particularly in Act 1 in the beginning. I can't tell you how many people I've had in my family and also friends and people online that say, you know, who are these two guys with the kid? Are they both fathers to him, or where's his parents? Or does he have a mom and a dad? They say they're his uncles, but I never see. There's a lot going on there in the setup that we know the backstory because we had different versions of it. And ultimately what ends up in the film, because we have all the history with it, we know it so well that we realize later that the audience is really confused by certain things. Some of them get it, sure, but that's not the goal. The goal should always be that 100% of your audience follows what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's very interesting. Honestly, I'm saying that. So like with the whole like animation industry as it is like right now, like just with like more films coming out than ever before, like what would you say are like the pros of getting into animation right now? Like is it like what would you say like if someone was looking into getting into it, like with the experience of either doing this or working at Disney or Leica or whatever?
Well, I would say don't do this unless you really, really want to. if you've heard anything about what we went through, don't do it unless you're passionate about it, because it is, especially independent animation. But just you've got to really want to do it. You know, I don't do it for the money. Don't do it for the glory. You know,
you got to do it because you love it. You know, and animation is one of those processes that's, you know, like watching paint dry. They always talk about it in that kind of way, and it can be slow and laborious, and you have to kind of love the process of making something, of creating something from nothing, even though it's done frame by frame in the slowest possible way. The most difficult way to make a film is what animation is, and so you gotta really love it, and love what you can do to it and see the possibilities. I teach at a college. I started an animation program at Azusa Pacific University here in California, and I'm in year 3 of the program. And I tell my students all the time that, you know, this is, if you got into animation because you just, you know, you love watching Gravity Falls and all these things that you grow, or Disney and Pixar films, and you're a big fan, then you're probably in it for the wrong reason, because what you're going to see is how much work it takes to produce animation. And if you don't love that work and the creation of it frame by frame, And if that's not what you can fall in love with, then you should get out now. And basically I tell them that. But most of them, it scares them straight kind of thing, where they're like, okay, I'm going to bear down. I'm going to really, dig into this, because that's basically what I'm trying to tell them, is they got to dig in hard, and they got to know that it's not going to be easy, and just, just creating characters and stuff like that, little funny characters with a funny walk. It's a lot more than that.
Like, would you say it's like easier to get into animation now, just because of how everything, like I said, so many studios and such?
That's the other thing I tell my students, is that they're probably in the best possible place right now. When I was in animation and coming out of college, it was a scary time. And I remember people in the industry telling my brother and I, because I have a twin brother also, that when we came out of school at the same time, getting in the animation industry, and we used to be told, oh no, this is horrible. This is the worst part. Everything's going overseas, and the animation industry is going down the drain. And, you guys should go back to school and learn to be, lawyers or something like that. well, we were so passionate about it. There was no way we were going to do that. We were going to sink or swim and go straight into animation. Fortunately, it was right on the cusp of what happened in the 90s, when Disney, all of a sudden, Who Framed Roger Rabbit just came out the summer we came out of Cal Arts, and then right after that was Little Mermaid, and all of a sudden every film that Disney did got better and better and did more money, and the industry turned around overnight. And so what I tell my students now is that, animation is cyclical. It's got its highs, it's got its lows, but it's here to stay. And right now we're on a real high, because there are so many jobs, there's so many projects going on because of online streaming, that there's probably never been a better time to be coming into the industry, even at a low level, because opportunities exist to even go higher faster than ever before, because there's so much content that needs to be developed and that is being developed.
That's cool. Would you say there are things that, like, even as bountiful as the industry is right now, would you say that there are some things that you'd like to see change or anything like that? I mean, if you can't go into too much detail, don't worry about it.
Well, it goes back to our story, I guess, about making an independent film. There's not really good distribution platforms for the independent. And that's sad, I think. And that's been that way for a long, long time. But it's been better in the past for animation. Like I said, when, you can't say this name without wincing anymore, but the Weinstein Company used to be doing independent animation. Yeah. There was other smaller, what they call, mid-level distribution houses that supported animation. Lionsgate was one. Now, not so much anymore. There's been, failures in the past. So they got out of that business, and now they're all doing horror films or whatever that's the thing of the day. And so animation needs to have more support from distributors that will really invest and partner with creatives.
Yeah, it's like I like to write reviews for like a lot of the foreign indie stuff that comes out, and like whatever like comes on Netflix. And it seems like all these projects sound really cool, but there's not enough companies like G Kids or like Shout Factory kind of delve into like bringing foreign animated features, and they still kind of are to a degree from what I'm observing, but then they're not bringing over like in this corner of the world. They're bringing stuff that has like marquee value, like the Digimon stuff. And like I wish there was more support for the indie stuff, because then you get stuff like On Gakuwar Sound, which only costs like $40K, or supposedly $40K. Wow. And me and Mike just love that movie. And yeah, no, I think that's a pretty good area that could improve.
It would really help the growth of the industry and keep things going. Because there's got to be better ways to make a low budget film. It's the thing that bigger distribution companies always talk about but never do. Like, man, wouldn't it be great to have just really good stories, but at a lower budget point, kind of smaller films. Everybody talks about like, we should support smaller films and stuff like that. In the 90s, it was the rom-coms. You just don't see those anymore, because Marvel came out, and the Avengers movies, the superhero movies were all big tent posts, huge, big budget things. And Hollywood just went, and they just turned their gaze towards that, like Sauron, right? The Eye of Sauron just turned its gaze to, that's how you make big budget movies. That's how you make lots of money, is you pour lots of money into it, and it's got to be so big and bloated. And yet, there's models that worked in the past that people have just kind of turned their backs on or forgotten about largely because, and it's the other part of it is that executives turnover in Hollywood is immense. There's always some new 20-year-old that's going to take over, some distribution house or something like that only has the hindsight of, 5 years. So we're always just trying to relearn in the industry, it seems like.
That does seem like a thing. And no, especially like when I've seen like the foreign animation scene seems like at least looking at like what got nominated for Academy Awards, there's always like you see the Disney, the DreamWorks, the Pixar, and then like right around 2009, you saw like G-Kids come in with like Secret of Kells, or like 2017 had like The Breadwinner, which if I remember reading correctly, it was like $10 million, and it's like that looks like you watch that movie, it looks great.
Yeah,
and like I guess like would you say like if you're working on a small budget, would you say like a better visual like aesthetic would be helpful? Or because sometimes it seems like from what I've seen, like what Lionsgate brings to straight to video, it's like, oh, they're trying to be like Disney, but they can't. Mm-hmm. They don't have that budget or time or talent or whatever. Like what do you say, like what would you say, like if you're working on a small budget, what's important in the art direction to like make it work?
I mean, the main thing with a smaller budget film is knowing what you want up front and kind of sticking to it. You don't have the exploration money or time that you do at the bigger studios. So you just don't have the time like we did on Mulan, where we tried a bunch of things and and different art styles. And, Scott and I were like, okay, Carter Goodrich, that's who we're going to get to do the character designs. That's exactly what the characters are going to look like. Okay, what do the backgrounds look like? Okay, Armand Serrano, he's going to do the backgrounds. That's exactly what the backgrounds are going to look like.
You're trusting the team you hire.
Yeah, you got to kind of know what you want up front as much as possible, and then just go in that direction because there's no turning around.
Well, awesome, man. And I saw your message. You had to get going. But, Tony, thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Now, before we guys let you go, where can people find you guys online?
Scott?
Animal Crackers has a Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram page. Just look for the Animal Crackers movie. Lots of behind the scenes. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to see the Easter eggs on the YouTube channel.
I've seen a couple of them.
I've seen a couple,
yeah. And then me personally, it's usually Sava on Twitter and Sava Art on Instagram.
Yeah, and I'm Pumbaa Guy with 2 A's, Pumbaa, Pumbaa Guy on Instagram, Pumbaa Guy 1 on Twitter. And I have the Bancroft Brothers Animation Podcast that I'd love people to check it out if you're into animation, just like these guys. So we podcasts have to stick together when we're talking about animation. But yeah, we are going to be involved with Lightbox this weekend. I don't know when this will air, but we'll be at Lightbox also doing some panels too. So check us out there.
Awesome. You can find me on Twitter at CamsEyeView. And I also host a website called camseyeview.biz where I review animated films and do editorials, just kind of think pieces. Called The Other Side of Animation, where I talk about like the non-Disney Pixar stuff. Nothing against them. It's just I like looking at everything else. Mm-hmm. Mike, what about you?
You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at CaptainK42. Check out all my quick thought reviews on letterboxd.com/CoachK42. And look for me in all the various Facebook groups, just at my name. Don't forget to check us out at Renegade Pop Culture on Anchor and Spotify. Follow us on Twitter at Ren Pop Culture. And last but not least, check out our website, renegadepopculture.com. Need an escape? So do we. That's it for this week's episode. We'll catch you guys later. Peace out.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.